Welcome to Tutors Plus IB English with me, Dexter Haywood, IB English tutor, examiner and workshop leader. And today we're looking at a skill that many students overlook, but it's one that transforms the clarity and coherence of your entire I/O. Most IB English I/Os fall apart in the middle. Not because the ideas are weak, but because the connections between them are. Students often don't even notice it until they hear themselves back. And here's the thing. There's one skill that instantly raises the quality of your I/O, but it's not taught that often, and very few candidates learn how to use it properly, and the ability to really connect each idea smoothly into the next. So today I'm going to show you how to build these connections deliberately so that your I/O feels coherent, controlled, and examiner-friendly from start to finish. If your ideas don't lead into one another, your examiner can't reward them for criterion C. And one of the biggest misconceptions about the I/O is that it's simply a series of good points. This is encouraged by the fact that you have 10 points to take in with you. But the I/O is a spoken argument in relation to your global issue. Examiners need to hear how your ideas develop, how your thinking progresses, and how your interpretation deepens. And importantly, how your global issue threads through every single thing that you say. And when those connections are missing, the I/O starts to sound like isolated comments, strong individually, but weak when they're placed together. Whereas when those connections are present, I/O becomes a clear, coherent explanation of how meaning builds both across and within both texts. With this in mind, we need to consider that I/O is not a compare and contrast task. And this is an area that is often struggled with, as when students are taking this into account, they're taking into account the idea that it is a compare and contrast because there's two texts, which can be confusing, but it's not a paper two. It's completely different to paper two. You're not comparing authors, you're not weighing the different styles or deciding which text expresses the message more effectively. When you compare, two different things come up. Firstly, repetition, and secondly, judgment. You may say the ideas twice across texts, or you start evaluating texts instead of analyzing them, neither of which is rewarded in the I/O. What the I/O actually asks for is something much cleaner and smoother, how each text independently contributes to your understanding of the same global issue, not against each other, but alongside each other. And the easiest way to build natural connection is to let the global issue act as a thread that holds everything together. Each idea you discuss, every technique you analyze, every single aspect that you explain, all of it needs to ultimately return to the global issue. And this creates a natural rhythm. And this detail exposes the character's loss of autonomy, for example, deepening the global issue of control. And then later, your next idea extends it. Later in the extract, the tonal shift reinforces this dynamic by showing da-da-da. And you see it's constantly two, firstly mentioning the global issue and then joining from it. And when you transition to the second text, you've already established the thread. The global issue gives you that clean pivot. It makes it easy to flow from one point to the next. So while the first text reveals the personal impact of control, the second highlights how that same issue operates at a systemic level. That's how you create the flow. You're not comparing, you're continuing that same argument through a different lens. Another major reason I/Os might feel disconnection is that students repeat the same ideas in both texts. They find one good angle in the first extract, which is fantastic, but then they restate it for the wider work or the second extract. But examiners are not listening for development of that same idea across texts. They're looking for the way each text adds something new to your understanding of the global issue. Each text should reveal something that the other doesn't. A new consequence, a different emotional response, a broader social pattern, or a different authorial method. There shouldn't be duplication. And again, given the time frame that you're allowed, only 10 minutes, The idea is to show as you know as much as possible, which you can't do if you're repeating ideas. So ask yourself, what does the second text allow me to show that the first one doesn't? It might reveal a different emotional consequence, or highlight a broader cultural pattern, or challenge the perspective raised in the first text. For example, if your first text shows the global issue through internal conflict or personal suffering, your second text might expose how the issue is reinforced through institutions or social structures or ideology. So the second text should extend your thinking, not echo it. And remember, if you're finding this helpful, feel free to click like and subscribe below so you don't miss the next IB English guide. I'll see you there. And one of the clearest indicators of control in your I/O is the transition between your texts. When you switch abruptly, the oral feels disjointed. It jumps suddenly from text 1 to text 2. Now the second text, well, when they compare, and becomes repetitive. A strong I/O, on the other hand, shifts perspective smoothly. Now, moving to my second extract, for example, the global issue develops further through, or while the first text focuses on personal experience, the second reveals its broader implications, or the wider body of work complicates this idea by presenting, and these transitions maintain the flow. They don't compare, they simply guide your examiner into the next phase of your argument confidently and cleanly. Remember, connection isn't just between the two texts. It also needs to happen within each extract. Many I/Os collapse because the student moves from point to point to point without showing how that meaning develops, primarily because you have 10 bullet points to take with you into the I/O. And if you're rigidly focusing on these, your I/O will sound staggered. Whereas you want to feel a sense of progression. For example, this image reveals the character's sense of confinement, and then build on it. This confinement intensifies when the pacing accelerates, creating a sense of pressure that deepens the global issue. And these internal links show that you're not listing observations, you're explaining how the text constructs meaning. And this makes the oral smoother, and it strengthens your criterion B analysis and your criterion A interpretation at the same time, whilst also joining for criterion C of showing how smoothly you can flow through how structured your I/O is. And then we move into the synthesis, which is the strongest connection point in the entire oral. Yet, it's often skipped or missed just because it's at the end. The synthesis is not a summary of what you've said, and it's not a repeat of your introduction. It's the moment where your ability to connect ideas becomes most visible. So steer away from giving a recap of your points or a restatement of your line of inquiry. It's all about that final moment of insight, the point where both texts come together to reveal something more substantial about your global issue. For example, you might say across both texts, the global issue shifts from personal impact to societal consequence, revealing how control operates at multiple levels. Or taken together, the works show how the issue affects individuals emotionally, while also exposing the broader systems that create it. And this is the moment where examiners remember it's where the entire oral comes together. So again, think, what are the examiners listening for? By the end of your I/O, examiners are listening for 3 things primarily. Whether the global issue has stayed present and meaningful, whether the second text adds something genuinely new to develop the argument, and whether your synthesis shows a clear, thoughtful insight of how both texts explore the issue. And when these 3 elements are present, your I/O sounds unified, purposeful, and cohesive. Now, if you'd like personal guidance, linking your ideas, structuring your I/O, or strengthening your analysis, you can book a session with me, Dexter Haywood, or another IB English specialist at Tutors Plus. And remember to like and subscribe below if you want more IB English guidance, and best of luck with your I/O.